Welcome, traveler. We're glad you're here. Every story you hear is made with care and passion. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and check out the other adventures waiting for you on our channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the story. The plasma bolt screamed toward the Vorrak vessel's hull, its trajectory perfect, its energy signature optimized for maximum penetration. Commander Elena Vasquez watched through the Defiance's targeting scope as the bolt approached the alien ship's surface, then curved away like water flowing around glass, dissipating harmlessly into space. "What the hell?" Lieutenant Torres muttered from the weapons console. Elena's throat constricted. The bolt hadn't just missed, it had been guided away. As if the Vorrak ship existed inside a bubble of altered physics where human weapons simply couldn't function as designed. "Ma'am," came Ensign Rodriguez's voice from communications, barely controlled panic bleeding through his professional tone. "The Yorktown she's coming apart." The main display flickered, showing Admiral Morrison's flagship 3,000 kilometers to starboard. The massive dreadnought wasn't exploding, it was unfolding. Hull plates peeled away in geometric patterns, revealing the ship's internal structure like a flower blooming in reverse. No fire, no atmosphere venting, just methodical, mathematical dismantlement. Elena forced herself to watch until the last piece of debris went dark. 37 ships had entered this engagement. Now 12 remained, scattered across Saturn's orbital plane like leaves before a hurricane. "All ships, this is Defiance," she announced, each word requiring conscious effort. "Execute Withdrawal Protocol 7. Fall back to Titan Station." The retreat tasted like copper and defeat. 3. Months ago, the Vorrak had arrived at the edge of the solar system in vessels that looked like geometric theorems given physical form. Their first communication had been elegant in its simplicity, a mathematical proof transmitted on all frequencies, demonstrating the statistical impossibility of human resistance. They'd been correct. 11 hours later, Titan Station Medical. "Bay Doctor." Sarah Okafor pressed her palm against the observation window, watching the thing that had once been Petty Officer Martinez convulse on the biobed. The REAPER parasite samples writhed under his skin like living tattoos, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. "How long has he been like this?" Elena asked, joining the doctor at the window. 16 hours since initial injection. The parasites are mapping his nervous system, learning it. Okafor's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who'd been awake for 3 days straight. "Elena, what we're discussing isn't medicine, it's voluntary possession." Elena studied the readings on Martinez's monitor. Brain activity showed patterns that shouldn't exist in human neurology, mathematical progressions that resembled Vorrak communication protocols. "Is he still human?" "I don't know what he is anymore." Okafor pulled up a neural scan. "The parasites aren't just interfacing with his biology, they're rewriting it. Every cell, every synapse. In 12 hours, there may not be enough of Martinez left to call him Martinez. But he'll be able to interface with Vorrak technology? The early tests suggest yes. But Elena, listen to what you're asking. You want to infect our remaining crews with an organism that will fundamentally alter what they are. The person who emerges from this process won't be the person who went in." Elena turned away from the window. Martinez had volunteered, knowing the risks, knowing he might not survive as himself. But outside Titan Station, 67 Vorrak warforms moved toward Earth with mathematical precision, and conventional weapons had proven useless. "How many volunteers do we have?" 312, from across the fleet. Okafor's reflection in the window looked haunted. "They're calling themselves the Dead Company, soldiers who've already written their obituaries." "And you?" "Will."
"You undergo the procedure?" Okafor was quiet for a long moment. "I've been studying the parasite for months. I understand what it does better than anyone, which is why I'm terrified." She faced Elena. "But yes, someone needs to monitor the integration,
process from the inside. Someone needs to remember what we were before we became whatever we're becoming. 18 hours later, UES Defiance Bridge. The ship felt wrong now. Subtle vibrations hummed through the hull, new subsystems online, alien geometries integrated into human engineering. Elena's command chair had been modified with neural interface, ports that gleamed with bioluminescent patterns. When she sat down, microscopic filaments automatically connected to the ports implanted behind her ears. The sensation was indescribable. Her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her skull, flowing through the ship's systems like water through crystal channels. She could feel every bolt, every circuit, every crew member's enhanced heartbeat. The Defiance wasn't just her command anymore. It was her body. Integration complete, Commander. The voice belonged to Torres, but the harmonic undertones were pure Vorrak. His eyes reflected light like mirrors now, and when he moved, his joints articulated with mechanical precision. REAPER protocol active across all remaining vessels. Elena nodded, the gesture creating ripples through the ship's neural network. She could sense the other enhanced commanders across the fleet. Morrison aboard the rebuilt Yorktown, Captain Singh on the Perseverance, Commander Nakamura commanding the Retribution. They were no longer entirely human, but they were still themselves. "Mostly, signal the fleet," Elena commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that made the bridge's crystalline surfaces resonate. "We intercept the Vorrak advance guard in 40 minutes. The tactical display showed their target. A single Vorrak warform conducting a reconnaissance sweep of Jupiter's moons. One alien vessel against 12 hybrid ships, crewed by beings that had volunteered to stop being human. "Ma'am," Rodriguez announced, his vocal cords now capable of producing frequencies that would have shattered his original larynx. "Incoming transmission from the Vorrak vessel." On screen, the view screen resolved into a three-dimensional geometric pattern that shifted through configurations that violated Euclidean space. When it spoke, the voice was mathematically precise, each syllable calculated for optimal information transfer. Human designation vessels detected. Current tactical assessment, resistance probability 0.0001%. Efficient. Termination protocols available upon surrender. Continued aggression will necessitate inefficient resource expenditure. State intention. Elena stood, neural filaments automatically disconnecting with wet, organic sounds. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Forces. We choose option 3. Option 3 is mathematically undefined." "Exactly." Elena smiled, and the expression was both human warmth and mathematical precision. "That's what makes it interesting." 1 hour later. Combat zone. The Defiance shuddered as coherent energy beams carved through her outer hull. But Elena felt each wound as if it were carved into her own flesh. Around her, the hybrid ships of the human fleet danced through space, in patterns that should have been impossible, their movements guided by tactical algorithms learned from studying Vorrak combat data. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, Torres reported with inhuman calm. "REAPER parasites are analyzing the beam frequency. Integration in progress." Another ship died, the Meridian, her hull folding inward like origami. But as captain, Rodriguez's consciousness fragmented across the quantum foam. The death transmitted something precious, complete analysis of the Vorrak weapon that had killed them. "All ships, adjust weapons frequency to 7.42 terahertz, Elena commanded. "Fire." The human weapons had changed. Instead of plasma bolts, they fired streams of crystallized energy that moved through space in helical patterns, guided by mathematical principles stolen from Vorrak physics. When they struck the alien vessel's shields, cracks appeared in the previously impenetrable barrier. "Impossible," came the Vorrak transmission, and for the first time, Elena detected something that might have been uncertainty in its mathematical voice. "Your weapons exhibit our own frequency signatures. This configuration is not contained within acceptable parameters." Elena gripped her command chair as another beam tore through the Defiance's spine. She could feel her ship dying, feel her crew's enhanced bodies failing as atmosphere rushed into space. But she could also feel the data flowing between ships, each death teaching the survivors something new about their enemy. "We're quick learners," she managed to say as the bridge filled with fire and crystalline atmosphere. "That's what makes us dangerous." The Defiance died 17 minutes later, her hull breached in 37 places. But as Elena's consciousness fragmented, she felt her final transmission upload successfully to the quantum beacon network, hidden in Saturn's rings. The REAPER protocol was now active across all human space. 72 hours later, Kuiper Belt Shipyard. The darkness beyond Neptune's orbit, automated construction bays that had been dormant for decades, suddenly blazed with bioluminescent activity. Shipyards designed for asteroid mining began producing something that defied classification, vessels that looked like the offspring of human engineering and Vorrak mathematics. The first ship to emerge from Shipyard Delta 9 was beautiful in the way that fractals are beautiful. Its hull incorporated crystalline matrices that pulsed with internal light, while weapon arrays configured themselves into patterns that seemed to bend space around them. The ship's hybrid AI transmitted a simple message across all frequencies. Death is temporary. Learning is eternal. REAPER Protocol. Phase 2 initiated. 4 days later, Mars Orbit Admiral Sarah Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship that had no name because human language lacked words for what it had become. The vessel's hull shifted between human titanium steel and Vorrak crystalline matrices, adapting to threats that hadn't even materialized yet. Her crew, technically deceased for 96 hours, operated interfaces that fed information directly into their modified neural systems. Morrison herself was no longer recognizably human. The REAPER parasites had rebuilt her from the molecular level up, creating something that thought with human creativity but processed information with Vorrak precision. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic frequencies that made the ship's hull resonate like a musical instrument. "Status of the Vorrak main fleet?" she asked. "They've reached Mars orbit," reported Commander Torres, his form now more energy than matter. "Their formations are confused. Tactical AI generating conflicting probability matrices." Morrison smiled, and the expression created interference patterns in the light around her face. "Show me." The main display revealed the Vorrak Armada, 67 warforms arranged in perfect geometric formation. But something was wrong with their movement patterns. Ships occasionally stuttered in their trajectories, adjusting course for threats that didn't exist, responding to tactical data that made no logical sense. "They're fighting ghosts," Morrison realized. "The REAPER parasites aren't just learning from them, they're feeding false information back into their networks." "Signal from the lead Vorrak vessel," Torres announced. On screen, the familiar geometric pattern appeared, but now it flickered with instabilities that hurt to perceive. When the Vorrak intelligence spoke, its voice carried undertones of something that might have been confusion. Unacceptable variables detected in human fleet configuration. "Your vessels exhibit Vorrak technological signatures while maintaining impossible tactical patterns." "Explain this paradox." Morrison stepped forward, her form shifting between solid matter and coherent energy. "You taught us that resistance was mathematically impossible, so we stopped resisting. This statement lacks logical coherence. We evolved. Past the need for logic. We became something you couldn't calculate." Morrison's voice grew harmonics that made the Vorrak transmission flicker. "You brought us to extinction. We used it to transcend." 14 hours later. Earth orbit. The battle for Earth lasted exactly 43 minutes and 17 seconds. The Vorrak Ascendancy, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, encountered something their mathematics had never predicted. An enemy that became stronger through defeat. The hybrid human fleet moved through space like a living equation. each ship's actions calculated by minds that combined human intuition with Vorrak precision. Weapons fired at frequencies that made reality itself uncomfortable, causing Vorrak shields to collapse inward upon themselves. Drones that had once been overridden by alien systems now sang Vorrak navigation networks into feedback loops that tore warships apart from the inside. Morrison watched from her impossible bridge as the last Vorrak command ship spun helplessly in Earth's gravity well, its crystalline hull cracked and bleeding exotic radiation into space. "Ma'am," Torres reported, his voice now indistinguishable from the ship's AI, "the Vorrak intelligence is attempting to transmit surrender protocols." "They still think in terms of mathematical certainty," Morrison replied, her consciousness extending through the ship's systems to caress the dying Vorrak vessel with sensor beams. "They can't comprehend an enemy that thrives on impossibility." She opened a communication channel to the broken warship. "This is Admiral Sarah Morrison of what used to be the United Earth Forces. Your calculations were perfect, your logic was flawless, your mathematics were beautiful." The response came as fragmenting geometric patterns, meaning dissolving into quantum static. "But you made an error in your fundamental assumptions," Morrison continued, her words creating standing waves in the space between ships. "You calculated based on what we were. You never considered what we might choose to become. 3 days." Later, Vorrak command vessel, Earth Orbit Elena Vasquez, or the entity that had once been Elena Vasquez, walked through the crystalline corridors of the captured Vorrak flagship. Her form shifted between states of matter as she moved, sometimes solid flesh and bone, sometimes pure information flowing through the ship's neural networks. The command chamber stretched before her like a cathedral built from mathematics itself, walls flowing with equations that described the rise and fall of civilizations. At its center, the Vorrak collective intelligence hung suspended in a web of light and calculation, its consciousness trapped within algorithms that could no longer process the reality around them. "Your mathematics were beautiful," Elena acknowledged, her voice creating harmonics that made the entire chamber resonate like a bell. "Perfect, elegant, inevitable." The Vorrak intelligence pulsed with patterns that conveyed defeat and incomprehension in languages that had no words. "But beauty isn't survival," Elena continued, placing what had once been her hand against the command interface. "And perfection isn't adaptability. You built a universe of certainties, and we introduced the one variable you couldn't calculate: the willingness to stop being what we were." Information flowed between them, human creativity merging with Vorrak precision, creating something that was neither and both. Elena felt the alien consciousness recoil as it encountered concepts it couldn't quantify. Love that defied logic, hope that persisted despite mathematical proof of its impossibility, the peculiar human capacity to choose growth over safety. "We didn't defeat you," she said, as her consciousness began to merge with the ship's systems, human intuition weaving itself through Vorrak logic like vines through crystal lattice. "We joined you. We became something that could encompass both what you were and what we were, and then we became something more." The last Vorrak warship powered down as Earth's new flag unfurled across its hull, a banner that shifted between human stars and stripes and Vorrak geometric patterns, never quite one thing or the other, always becoming. "The universe isn't an equation to be solved," Elena whispered, as her individual consciousness dispersed into the ship's neural network, becoming part of something larger. "It's a story being written by everything that's brave enough to change." Epilogue. 6 months later, Dr. Sarah Okafor stood before the memorial wall that stretched across an entire deck of the rebuilt Titan station. Names were carved in script that shifted between human letters and Vorrak geometric patterns. Soldiers who had died as one species and been reborn as something unprecedented. She was still recognizably human, one of the few who had refused the full integration protocol. Her body bore the scars of the REAPER parasite's initial modifications, but she had fought to maintain her original neurological patterns, her purely human way of thinking. Someone had to remember what they had been before the transformation. The outer colonies are requesting integration assistance. Admiral Morrison's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, her consciousness now distributed throughout the station's systems. The transition from singular to collective awareness is challenging. Okafor nodded to the walls, knowing Morrison could see her through 1,000 sensors. Evolution always is, but at what cost? Everything, Morrison's reply carried harmonics, of both sorrow and acceptance. We paid everything we were to become everything we could be.
Through the station's transparent aluminum windows, Earth hung in space like a blue-green jewel, but it was no longer alone. Hybrid ships moved in and out of orbit, vessels that defied classification, crewed by beings that had chosen to transcend the limitations of single-species consciousness.
Sometimes I wonder if we won, or if we simply found a more elegant way to lose, Okafor murmured. Morrison's laughter came as light patterns dancing across the walls. Does it matter? We survived. We adapted. We became something that could encompass both victory and defeat, and then we became something beyond both. Okafor turned from the memorial wall, her footsteps echoing in corridors that hummed with hybrid consciousness. Outside, the fleet prepared for departure to regions of space where other species were beginning to experiment with their own versions of the REAPER protocol. The war was over. Humanity, as it had existed, was extinct. But something new had taken its place, something that carried the best of what humans had been while reaching toward possibilities that purely human minds could never have imagined. And in the spaces between thought and calculation, between intuition and logic, between what was and what could be, consciousness itself was evolving into forms that the universe had never seen before. The transformation was complete. The real journey was just beginning.